You're listening to Blitz.
Alright, something a little bit different. We're going to look at brake light switches for a motorcycle here. Now, this is the original that was fitted to my Suzuki. It's made by ALPS, so a well-known brand. You know, they make good switchgear, good components. You know, you can't really go wrong with it. The problem is that if you want to buy a genuine part, they're charging something like, 4,000 yen, which is, like in the region of about $45. So it's a bit expensive. You can get aftermarket ones, good aftermarket ones, for about half that. And they're even cheaper if you get the left-hand one. For some reason, obviously, the right ones wear out more frequently, so they're the ones that get sold more often. This is a AliExpress one. I think I bought a pair for maybe $2, something like that, so not very expensive. I thought, well, I'm just going to have a go and see whether it solves the problem. Initially, it seemed to be working okay, but anyway, we'll get into it and we'll show you what's gone wrong or why it doesn't work anymore. So I think I had this on for about a week, and then I noticed that the brake light wasn't coming on, which was the problem I had in the first place, and why I needed to replace this. That said, I think I've actually fixed this one so that it would work again. But anyway, we'll have a look at how they're made. So let's open this one up. So there we go, we're inside. So these posts, basically they weld in from this side. Basically they just plug, and that holds the halves together. So I've broken those when I've pulled it apart just to see how to get in there. So if you wanted to do maybe a more gentle disassembly, maybe just drill those plugs out ever so slightly until it comes apart easily, and then you could probably re-weld it back together. The failure point on this, if we have a look in here, I'll just use knife to point, was just in there. Basically these contacts got a bit of corrosion and dirt, and they get a lot of moisture. They're sitting underneath the thing. I think my particular bike, before I bought it, the person probably had it sitting outside for a long time. There's lots of evidence, a lot of switchgear was corroded and whatever. So not surprising that this didn't work, but after I scraped that clean with a knife, it's all working very nicely. And you can see that this is made very well, quite expensively. It works the way you think a contact switch like this should work, which is, it's got a really nice spring mechanism in there, ultra reliable, and probably now could go back in and work for, maybe another decade without too many dramas, especially if you can keep it, dry. Okay, so that's the good one. That's why Alps makes good gear and why they've got their reputation. Okay, so it's expensive. I'm going to argue later that, you should just pay the money. So let's have a look at this one here. So that's it. It's nowhere near the same construction. It's a simple design. It possibly should work better than this one does. So what you have here is you have a slider and you got your contacts there. And what happens is you normally got the switch in this inward position here, so the contacts are not touching each other. And as soon as you sort of pull on the brake lever, this comes out and it makes contact, and your brake light goes on, and that typically works pretty well. This doesn't seem to work very well, and I think it's a bit of looseness in there. The construction of this is not great. There's no like spring contact. It's just based on the friction, but if there's no friction there, it's not working. And it worked for maybe a week. It doesn't have a real convincing click sound, so I don't know, there's a lot of wobble in there. It just doesn't work properly. So that's the problem. It's not made well. There's other switch designs kind of like this that work very well. They've got a much better contact path. you know, they use grooves and slips of metal. I mean, you've probably seen those typical sort of switches, like push switches. You know, it's not a hard thing. It could have been made a little bit better, but it would be more expensive, and that's probably why they've opted for this way. This is cheap. Yeah, it's cheap, but it didn't work, did it? Not for long anyway. So, you know, these are a few dollars for a pair, and you can buy packs of like 10, and you'd probably get a good one or two out of a pack of 10, and it'd probably work fine. Maybe this is just a bung one, but you know what? I don't really reckon that's worth it. So we'll go back to this ALPS, okay? So it's expensive. The aftermarket one's maybe half the price. I think that's worth it, because you know, you want to give good indication to the person behind you. You are slowing down. You don't want your helmet through their windscreen being the first that they know about it. So no, it's just not worth mucking around with these cheap things if they're going to be made like this. It's just not worth it. So my advice is, forget them. Get something decent. At least get a decent aftermarket thing made, you know, somewhere where they know what they're doing. Probably by a company that knows what they're doing. You know, the aftermarket ones are probably made by ALPS as well. I'm not quite sure, but it's just not worth the risk. Not for $20.